Een lang gekoesterde wens van mij is in vervulling gegaan. Ik ben in West-Australië om de spoor te achterhalen van Nederlandse scheepvaarders. Hier in deze wateren zijn eeuwen geleden vele Nederlandse schepen gestrand. Op weg naar Indonesië geraakten ze uit koers en vergingen voor de kust van West-Australië. Een land dat op dat moment niet ontdekt was en alleen nog maar bewoond was door Aboriginals. Ik ben gefascineerd door het idee dat die Nederlanders, lang voor de Britse kolonisatie, misschien wel wisten te overleven en zijn ze in contact gekomen met de Aboriginal gemeenschap. En misschien, stel je eens voor, zijn ze wel opgenomen door hun gemeenschap. Van alle schepen die verongelukt zijn, weten we hoe het met de bemanning is vergaan. Overlevenden wisten met opgeknapte sloepen en boten terug te keren naar Batavia en konden zo hun verhaal doen. Maar van één schip weten we heel weinig. De Zuiddorp. Verongelukt in 1712 voor de ruige rotskust in de buurt van Shark Bay. Het wrak is gevonden. Aan boord was een lading van 248.000 zilverstukken, met een bemanning van 200 tot 300 man. Zouden ze allemaal zijn omgekomen of zou er contact zijn geweest? Om hier antwoord te krijgen op mijn vraag heb ik hulp van een onschatbare waarde. Nonja Peters, een historicus met Nederlandse roots. Zij heeft jarenlang onderzoek gedaan naar de mogelijke contacten.
Today we're doing Len Collard, and then we're going to do Phil Playford, and then we're going to do Michael McCarthy at the museum, and then we're going to the Hive, and then we're having coffee with the group.
Ja, cool.
That's enough, you know.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow is Geraldton, and then it's Shark Bay. Then we come back and we go to Ledge Point with Bob Shepherd, and then we come in and go to the headquarters of the VOC and do Jan James, and 4 o'clock back here, Alison Patterson, and then we have fish and chips, and we shovel you on a plane back. How's that?
Sounds good. Aangezien we natuurlijk geïnteresseerd zijn naar de Aboriginal verhalen over het contact tussen Nederlanders en Aboriginals, hebben we een afspraak met niemand minder dan Len Collard. Een Aboriginal van het gebied rondom Perth en tevens professor van Indigenous Studies op de universiteit. Aan hem vragen we hoe hij denkt dat er in de 17e eeuw tegen vreemdelingen aangekeken werd.
Oh well, I mean, from the storytelling point of view, I mean the Aborigines here as well as elsewhere saw the ships out on the ocean. They didn't know what they were, and of course when they saw things like people that they're not familiar, they make sure that they look after themselves, so they hide in the bush, and they watch the boats and they watch the people come. Sometimes the mariners saw them, but they didn't actually speak to them. They kept away. One, because they were suspicious. They wanted to know what were these things. In their mind, they thought they were. One of the explanations was they were big birds, and on the back of the bird were white people, which they thought were ghosts, or maybe devils or spirits or something, or things which were unfamiliar. And so this part of the reason why they thought they were birds was in the Dreamtime stories, when a person passes away and deceased, well, their spirit goes to the west, to the islands off of Wajamup and what the Dutch call Rat Nest, to the islands off the coast. And so when the boats came from that way, they thought they were ghosts that were coming back from what, way away. Though you could imagine that something completely strange. It'd be like if a UFO landed here, would you run it there going, "Hi, how are you?" You'd probably be running that way. Yeah. So in a sense, when the boats came, they were like UFOs from outer space, completely unfamiliar, don't know what it was, and so you can imagine how people might feel about that.
Dat klinkt eigenlijk best wel logisch allemaal. Zouden schipbreukelingen in die tijd er kunnen overleven zonder hulp van Aboriginals? In het Scheepvaartmuseum van Fremantle zijn onderdelen van 4 schepen. de Gill Dragon, de Zeewijk, de Batavia en de Zuiddorp. Wij gaan op bezoek met Playford, die officieel erkend is als dé ontdekker van deze scheepswrakken. Hij kan ons vast meer vertellen over de plek van de Zuiddorp en dat hij denkt dat er overlevenden waren. How are you?
I'm alright, how are you?
Good, thanks.
My name's Phil Playford. I'm a geologist with a lot of interest also in history, particularly early Dutch history in relation to Western Australia.
Okay. And do you think there was a connection between the Dutch and the Aboriginal people?
I think it's very likely that survivors of the Zoutdorp wreck in 1712 did mix with the Aborigines of the area. There's no positive proof of that, but we have indications that they did intermingle with them.
And what are the indications?
The Zoutdorp was wrecked in the territory of the Mulgana tribe of Aboriginal people, and when the survivors of the wreck lit fires, those people would certainly have come to find out what was doing, and provided the survivors were not aggressive towards the Aborigines, they would have been prepared to help them. And I deduced that if the Aborigines did lead the survivors to water, the most likely place for them to have done so was to a place called Whale Well, which is 50 kilometres north of the site, and which was a place where a lot of Aborigines lived. So we went up there with metal detectors to the site and went over it with some detail. And the most exciting thing that we found was a brass tobacco box lid with the name Leiden on it and a depiction of the town of Leiden with the church spires and so on. This brass tobacco box lid was not damaged in any way. It was perfectly preserved.
So where were you looking? Where did you find this?
This is at Whale Well, 50 kilometres north of the wreck site. And we found 2 campsites of the survivors and picked up a lot of coins, shelling and double stivers, pieces of 8, ducatons, all from the ship. And incidentally, the Aborigines in Perth who told of this wreck in 1832, I think it was, they said that at the site there were coins which they described as dollars scattered all along the base of the cliffs, and sure enough that's how it was.
It was still like that?
Yeah.
Still like that story?
Yes,
and
still
the
there.
Aboriginal didn't take it?
The Aborigines regarded as a taboo site. They would not go there because no doubt they knew so many people had died there. The ship had on board 200 people at this stage when it was wrecked, and a significant number of them must have died during the wreckage, and others must have died after they came ashore. So the Aborigines knew that the spirits of these people were probably still there.
Okay.
The interesting thing is that when Perth was first settled in 1829, only 4 years later, a story came down through the Aborigines of the Perth area about a ship that had been wrecked 30 days walk north of Perth, and they gave a graphic description of what was undoubtedly the Zoutdorp wreck. And they said that people had survived and were living nearby. And I'm sure this was a story of the Zoutdorp wreck from 1712. And incidentally, they also said that the message had come down from whale men, or Whale was this site that we found the tobacco box lid.
It's amazing that the ship shipwrecked in 1700. In the
1712.
1712. People talk about it in the 1800s, about this
Yeah.
and this image about all these all these coins.
Yes.
And that in 1900 it's still there.
Yes, 1954, still there.
And still there, and it will be talked to more people than only that one guy, and you found it exactly like that. How amazing.
So it's been an amazing story, and it's not finished yet.
No,
we haven't finished telling this story yet. There's more to it than that.
Yes.
And we're sort of looking for any evidence of the fact that people came on shore and that there's a possible, you know.
See, the best chance, I knew the last two Malgana men who lived on Tamala Station, and one of them died and was buried on Tamala in his blanket, wrapped up in his blanket and buried there. And the police heard about this and they said that, yeah, should not have been done. So they came and dug up the body and took it into Denham and buried it in the cemetery. And if it were possible to exhume that body and take a sample for DNA, I think his name was Ginger. He was a full-blood Aborigine, but when he was young he had gingery coloured hair, and he lived. He was the last to live. I think he had some genes that protected him.
Right.
You know.
Yes.
And if I think that would be the best chance of demonstrating.
Thank you so much for this interview. Thank you.
Bye.
See you later.
Yeah. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Op het moment dat wij wilden filmen bij het Scheepvaartmuseum waren ze aan het bouwen en timmeren en konden we helaas niet filmen. Gelukkig kon Mac ons toch ontmoeten. Hij vertelt ons wat hij denkt en wat hij weet van de Zuiddorp. Tell me about the connection between the Dutch and the Dutch sailors and the Aboriginal people.
We've learnt there's probably none, Carol. One of my people, Kate Morse, Dr. Kate Morse, she had a look at the indigenous sites at the Zuiddorp and showed they were at the earliest 4,000 years old. Now, we also looked at the possibility that Aboriginal people moved up the coast, which we know they did, from the finding of Dutch relics at Wells and Soaks North. But the area between the shipwreck and the line of Wells and Soaks is about 10 kilometres of almost impenetrable bush, and it appears they had no reason to go to the sea. So, and the other very important thing is that Indigenous legend says nothing about the wreck. Now, if they'd come across this wreck and seen the remains of this ship scattered everywhere, and I hate to say it, but many, many bodies. And to the Aboriginal people, the European bodies were almost a spiritual thing because they were, you know, like their own bodies, they tend to lose the colour. That would have entered their legend. So that's number two. But equally, none of the diseases we know of, like Porphyria variegata, which once was thought to be linked, has shown to be statistically in any way, shape or form more in the population of Aboriginal people. The DNA, there was 140 Malay boys, 12 to 14, tragic, brought out on a little steamer to work in the pearling industry in 1870. Now, the Dutch are in the Indies from 1600 right through to 1870 when these boys come out. And the chances of the Dutch genes going through these into the Malay population, as they were called in those days, they weren't from Malaysia, is far greater coming out on this ship carrying 140 boys than on the Zuiddorp. And even if you did have an intermingling from the Zuiddorp, you'd have to say, well, how do we differentiate between all these unfortunate young boys brought out and abandoned here in Western Australia? Now, a lot of the Shark Bay people are a combination of Aboriginal, Chinese and Malay. Malay is the word they use for everything to the islands north. So those lines of inquiry are exciting. They're fascinating to people. The Aboriginal people would love there to be the link, and a lot of Dutch people too. But being a boring scientist, we have to say, sorry, there's too many other variables, Carol.
And what doctor, we just went to Dr. Clayford, he said there's found a cigarette case.
Philip Philip did some extraordinary, wonderful work in those early days, long before archaeology was known. He wrote the book on this wreck.
Yeah.
But he also postulated that there had to be movement to a place called Whale Well.
Yeah.
Now he's speaking to you about that, and there's a beautiful tobacco box lid with Leiden on it. I was there with them. Now, the problem with that is, was the lid taken by people from the wreck in a movement north, taken by the Aborigines, come with us, there's water here, we'll go here, and Philip has proven they were moving between these wells and soaks inland. He would have told you about the rocks from here there. The problem is, who took it? Was it those people in 1712 or later, or was it the indigenous European station people who made the line of wells and soaks that they used for the stations? And I'm doing a study on that right now. And it's equally possible, sadly, that these could have been moved later. And what you have to try and do, I think, is link it categorically with an early event. So it's just like you picking up someone's suitcase that was left here and moving it over there. The original owner of the suitcase didn't necessarily move it over there. And again, you have that boring science that you have to bring in. So you have good stories, wonderful ideas and thoughts, wouldn't it be wonderful? But then you have to temper it with what we know of the issues.
Thank you so much for the interview.
Yeah, Carol, it's a pleasure. Have a good trip home.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Vandaag ontmoeten we Bob, een archeoloog die ook meerdere keren met Playford naar de Zuidorp-site is geweest. Hij laat ons vol trots allerlei overblijfselen zien van de overlevenden die van de vergulde draak kwamen. Wij proberen een vergelijk te maken tussen de twee scheepswrakken. Maar kan dat eigenlijk wel?
Hi Bob.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take you to all the sites that have traditionally been related to the gilt dragon and the gilt dragon survivors. All the ones from my research and research from Rupert Gerrits and other people. So it's a bit of a tough trip. We haven't got a lot of time and it's a pretty rough track. So that's what we intend to do this morning.
I've got some footage
Yeah?
of this outdoor site.
You have?
Yeah. I think it'll be reasonable enough quality to use. I can
Okay,
give
cool.
it to you. Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, just I went up there with Phil Playford
Yeah.
in November.
interviewed Phil.
Have you interviewed him?
Yeah. So you've been up with Playford when?
November last year.
Okay,
And then I
yeah.
went up. I've been on probably 4 trips with him over the last 30 years.
Cool. Yeah, it will be great to have some footage of that because it's actually not possible to go up there by our
No,
own.
you need a minimum of 4 days to get in and out and do anything.
Yeah, and permission.
You need and permission, and you need a vehicle that you don't care about.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's really nasty.
It's interesting to compare who got off here, who got off the Zeewek, and how many got off the Batavia, and how far from shore did they wreck, to see and make comparisons about that, you know, and also that from there we extrapolate how many got off the Zuidorp, because it gives you a fair idea of how many people are actually managing to get off a wreck even 5 mile out from. But these guys had boats, but I don't know if the others off the Batavia got onto boats as well, you know?
Yeah, look, the Zeewek and the Batavia on their Bolus Islands, 25-30 k's off the coast of Geraldton. It's a whole different scenario, and I think it'd be really hard to do a comparative analysis of this one with the Zoutdorp, because the Zoutdorp is just a cliff that stands up like that, and they just went bang into the bottom of it, and they had to climb up the cliff to get to safety. Whereas this is a lot more gentle environment. So I'm not a big fan of the concept that there was dozens and dozens of survivors from the Zoutdorp. I reckon there was just a handful that made it. There's not a lot of evidence up there either, and I've spent months up there, and we haven't found a lot. Found more than we had here, mind you.
Yeah. I have to say that as a woman and wanting to be cool, and they would, that if there were families there at all, the women are going to say, we're staying here, just put another wall up, you know, because you guys go looking for the water and the fish, and we'll stay here with any children, you know, because it's protected, you can see if anything's coming. You protected, and that was to protect them from anything else. You know, maybe snakes or whatever.
We don't even have a passenger. We don't even know who was on the boat. But we do with the Batavia and other ships, and I can't understand why we don't know who's on
Well,
the
that's right. But a lot of stuff is also chucked away at that period. But that doesn't mean to say it's not there, or that there's a duplicate, because they used to do duplicates in those days. But it means scouring archives in Batavia, South Africa, and The Hague.
I think the ghosts up here are still a little bit restless.
Yeah.
And I think we have a responsibility to try and find out what happened.
Oké, daar gaan we dan. Op weg richting Shark Bay, waar we onderweg even stoppen om in Geraldton verhalen te horen van de Aboriginal groep Amango.
The Amango people are the true traditional owners of this area, and my grandfather was a lawman, authority. Grandfather did tell me about sailors, and when a boat got wrecked on the coast north of Geraldton, quite a few years later, he saw these children, blonde-headed children, and he remarked about it, and I do remember it distinctly because there were lots of people talking about it, that when the white-headed children were in a tribal situation.
Do you know what happened with these children in the group? Did you hear more about that?
No, the story was that there were white men that were wrecked in the boat when the ship went aground and sank. That was the story back in those days. I probably would have been a teenager when I first heard about it, and there was treasure found as well on the cliffs, the Zytorp cliffs. So that was where the story actually came from.
So that were survivors maybe from the Zuidorp?
Yes. It seemed that there may have been survivors that were helped by the Aboriginal people and taken into the tribe and looked after.
What do you think when we find, yes, there is a Dutch link between Aboriginals and Dutch people? What do you think? Do you like that, or does it matter?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's something that had to happen, I guess. Yeah, I could see it would have happened anyway.
En dan is het nu dan bijna zover. Onze trip van Perth naar Shark Bay, die al om 3 uur 's nachts begon, is bijna ten einde. Erg benieuwd naar de verhalen hier en wat ons deze zoektocht weer brengt.
Maybe can you introduce yourself?
Say who you are. Tell it. I'm Nellie Cox of Denham. I was born here in 1927 and I'm still here.
And your name? May Poland.
And I'm Kathleen Oakley. I'm born in 1936 in Denham and still here.
Do you know about the Dutch connection between Dutch sailors and Aboriginal people?
No, not really. I couldn't tell you anything about that.
No, you don't know anything about that?
No.
Do you know the early stories that went in the group? Some of the stories that you would have heard about the shipwreck and things like that? about the fact that there is a shipwreck there, that it was Dutch, any of those sort of stories? If you were told you knew some of these stories.
Nellie might be able to tell you more about that. No, not really, but it's years and years ago when they all used to have different cultures down the beach, all used to mix, and they used to teach our lot, you know, different things and different culture of food.
Yeah, of the Ogilvies.
True.
Yeah, and doesn't come back in stories, in Aboriginal,
No.
in dream stories or whatever. Doesn't
We
come
don't have them told to us no more. There's no need to tell us about different histories.
No, but you get history stories from your grandparents.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm forgetting too now. Because I'm not a chick, you know, lovey.
Toeval bestaat niet, zegt men wel eens. Na het gesprek met de elders kom ik tot de conclusie dat we hier niet veel verder komen met onze zoektocht naar het bewijs dat er contact is geweest met Aboriginal mensen. Totdat ik verschillende mensen in het schuurtje mijn ongenoegen vertel. Dan komt Keith opeens naar me toe en zegt dat hij wel informatie heeft. Is Keith het levende bewijs van contact?
Yeah, no, my name's Keith Capewell. Yeah, from Shark Bay here. And we have information about the Zootdorp wreck. And there's always been two sides of the story. And we were brought up with the story that our grandmother found the wreck. Back in those early days, her and her husband and family were working on Murchison House Station.
And what time is this? What is the year?
That was back in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And they did all the fencing and building water tanks for the sheep out in the bush. They had 16 kids, and they all lived out in the bush. Our mother was born out in the bush, east of Kalbarri. But she was out fishing one day and saw all the coins on the rock. And our grandparents, they couldn't read or write, so they just saw these shiny things, so they didn't know it was actually money. But some of our older aunts that were young teenagers at the time, they told us stories how they used to play with these coins. Eventually Tom Pepper got hold of that story, and he got one of the Aboriginal people to take him to the wreck site, and while he was there he actually took the figurehead off the ship back to his out camp. His out camp was on Murchison Station. Gijai is the name of the out camp. And then later, I don't know how, but he got in contact with Philip Playford. He was a young journalist, and got him to come up, and he took him to the wreck site. So, you know, some of the stories that you hear, Aboriginal stories, are that when they first saw white people, they were scared. They thought they were come down from somewhere, you know, they were aliens.
Yeah.
But some of our written history here, you know, the French history, we got a bit of French history here, and some of the encounters they had with Aboriginal people. The Aboriginal people didn't want them here, you know, they were telling them to go away. That's recorded in the French history.
Yeah, but that's much later than 17.
Yeah, that was in the back in late 1800s. I think.
Yeah. So how do you think these people from the wreck and came to the normal life? Because it's so
well, you know,
it's really full of. It's really hard to come in, so it's also really hard to come out.
Yeah, no, well,
without
obviously they
knowledge.
came across the Aboriginal people, you know, that were living in that area, and for them to survive they had to mix and learn how to survive, I guess. So, and we don't know how many, no one will ever know how many survivors were there, but there would have had to been some, you know, when you look at the history here with not only our grandparents but some of the other local people. Some of the kids that were born with different things.
Yeah.
Some of the indications, my brother's eldest daughter was born with 6 fingers,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and apparently this is one of the Dutch traits that they have in a part of Holland over there.
Yeah.
And there's also a skin pigment in the skin.
Yes.
That I'm not sure what they call that, but my brother's got a severe case of that, and also my daughter has it. So.
Wow. Wow, that's a lot of things happening in your family.
You know.
A lot of truth.
Well, there's, you know, back in the old days we weren't allowed to talk about this. It was sort of something that they didn't want you talking about, but now it's we live in a different world, and we can speak about these things.
I was actually thinking that there was a lot of, in the Aboriginal culture, a lot of storytelling under each other.
Yeah, you just got to remember that we were brought up different here. You know, Shark Bay is a unique area, and we were brought up the European way, not traditional way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense for me.
Yeah, it wasn't so many years ago that you wasn't allowed to teach culture or language.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it was. But things have changed now, and we're learning. You know, I spent 9 years up in the Kimberley learning a bit about Aboriginal culture because we weren't taught it.
Yeah.
You can come with me, and maybe we can show you a picture of our grandmother and grandfather as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You want to do that now?
I want to do that,
and then we can come back and have some lunch.
Have some lunch, cool.
We're really keen on the stories, you know.
Well, the stories have been around a long time, you know, but they didn't really have a lot to do with the wreck, you know. It was mainly the Nunda people from down Kalbarri way. But our great-grandmother was Mulgana from here.
Yes.
And we're sort of still sorting that out, you know. It's,
what was her name?
Woothie. Like Woothie. Yeah. But anyway, you're going to find out something interesting here, so come in.
Thank you. How lovely.
I think I got the picture there. This one, this is her mother, and this one is Woothie. She was born and lived in Shark Bay. This is
Oh, I know a bit about that history. She comes into the story of the finding of the Zotdar. Oh, right.
This is my grandmother. My mother.
That's her, yeah.
I've written a whole thing in a book called The Dutch Down Under about the finding of that. I've called it Putting the Record Straight.
Oh.
Rec, W-R-E-C-K, odd, you know, instead of the normal way, writing it so that to sign, I looked at the Standing Committee's work to say these people really do have a claim, you know.
This one is Ada. This is our grandmother. You can see there's Dutch features there, the big boned and white skin. So, you know, that's...
Phil Playford reckons that there was a Mulgana man called Ginger.
Yeah, Ginger, yeah.
Because he reckons that he's an important link somehow. He thinks he's an important link.
Yeah, no, well, he's... there's lots of information, you know, like when you talk to my older brother, he worked with Ginger out at Tamla Station.
Yeah.
In fact, he was there when the night that he died. They buried him in the horse yard. And then later they
dug him up.
They dig him up.
Phil was saying. And he seems to think that his DNA might produce interesting.
Well, his sister Topsy Cross was one of our local elders here, and it's the trouble is a lot of our history from our old people was never recorded, and you know the younger ones now are just guessing.
And they don't know it anymore.
They don't know it anymore.
And it's tragic.
Het lijkt wel of alle verhalen terugkeren bij deze ene tak in de familie. We gaan weer terug richting Perth en gaan naar Jan James die ons haar levenswerk laat zien van 40 jaar registratie van Aboriginal mensen in Western Australia. Ook heeft ze de ziektes erin meegenomen waar Keith net over heeft verteld.
Every day of my life now, and that's not an exaggeration, I have Aboriginal people come to me because they need their ancestor report to prove that they belong to one tribe or the other.
Okay, yeah.
And I do that voluntarily for them. So
you get a lot of people.
Pardon?
So you have still a lot of interaction with
They've made me an honorary elder of the tribe. I am only the second white woman in the history of Western Australia to have that honour and to be given the name of Gubbly, which means grandmother.
Oh wow, that's a big
because it was the grandmother who carried the culture. And it's amazing, I forget sometimes what I'm doing tomorrow, but I can be introduced to an Aboriginal person and I'll say, who are you? They'll tell me and I'll tell them all about their forebears going right back. And I just think that it's very interesting when you see it like that printed out into the generations of just one family. I have 5 of these charts.
So this is one family?
This is just one family.
Yeah.
The Drage family and the Mallard, as I said, come from this lady, this baby, the Drages. She had 2 marriages. One was the Drage family and the other one was the Mallard family, and they're all related. So she's got porphyria, like her mother, and this man down here, this man, had porphyria.
Do you think it can be approved that there's a Dutch connection with that, or?
Well, I mean, it has to come from somewhere, doesn't it? It just didn't happen to one person. I can tell you there's 140 people throughout these charts who descend from those 5 matriarchs who have either, mostly, the extra fingers, and some have porphyria.
And these are people not only from Shark Bay area, but these are people...
the north, around Geraldton, Northampton, up that way. And I'm not out to prove that the Dutch, we all know the Dutch were here first, that's for sure. But it was the English who settled it, and who settled the colony, so that was the difference. But I really am convinced people have never been sure whether any of the crew from the Zeitdorf, and however you say it, we're talking 1712, aren't we? They have never proved that any of those crews survived. Well, to me it's obvious they did. If this comes from the Dutch, it just didn't materialise out of the air. And boys will be boys.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were there, and this is proof, to me. Like I said, I'm no academic, but I really do, you can't just brush it aside, can you?
En nu mijn conclusie. Ik dacht eerst, ik laat het in het midden, want in het begin leek het vooral een wel eens niet een spelletje. Maar hoe langer ik onderweg was en hoe meer mensen ik spreek, zelfs in de editingproces, ben ik ervan overtuigd dat er een connectie is geweest. Ik geloof in Playfords vuur die afgestoken is en dat de Aboriginal personen survivors hebben gevonden. En dat kwam ook terug in een verhaal dat 30 dagen van Perth een wrak was gevonden met survivors. En zoals Jan zegt, boys will be boys. Ik geloof ook niet dat er heel veel waren die gemingeld hebben met de mannen of vrouwen van de Aboriginals. Want daarvoor zijn er te weinig verhalen in andere families. Maar de links die terugkomen in de Drages en Mallards geven mij het gevoel, en dat is dus nog niet scientific bewezen, dat er contact was.